Hi everyone, welcome back to the Advanced Mortgage Solutions and Insurance Solutions podcast. Our guest today is Travis Hamilton from Plan B. He works closely with Scott and the team from Advanced Mortgage Solutions. Welcome, Travis.
Thanks, Joel. Thanks for having me.
So today we're going to talk about pre-existing conditions. Now this is often a bit of a awkward subject or has a lot of anxiety around it. So Travis is going to set the record straight and give us some details around how that part works with insurance. But first of all, Travis, do you want to give us a quick 1 minute overview of what type of insurance you do, and then we can jump into the pre-existing side of things?
Yeah, for sure. So I work in the personal and business insurance space. So basically anything around people, anything to do around their health, life, disability, trauma scenarios, medical cover, anything in that space. So if it walks and talks and breathes, that's the field that we're in, as opposed to
Awesome.
domestic insurance.
Awesome. And I can see how that ties into the mortgages side of things as well, obviously, because it's people that are taking out a loan from a bank. So there's that synergy there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's often one of the biggest decision-making times in their life, right? Where they've taken out probably their biggest asset or debt, and if it's just what would they want to have happen if something goes wrong, if everything doesn't go according to plan. So that's kind of where a lot of the work comes from.
Brilliant. Hey, yeah, so look, pre-existing conditions, tell us a little bit about that, and, does that apply to life insurance, health insurance, and then, give us a bit of a breakdown on how that all works.
So we get asked this and talk to clients about it quite a bit as to, what is a pre-existing condition? Will I have any, so on and so forth. And generally, it depends on what covers they're looking at, and also what pre-existing health conditions they may or may not have had, right? So just by way of example, something like health insurance, if you've got a current sore knee, or you've had a bad knee or an ACL, surgery, that's relevant, right? For the insurer to know that. Whereas something like life insurance, if you've got a sore knee or not, doesn't matter, because it's a different. So there's different kind of thresholds of what's deemed pre-existing depending on the cover, and not everything that's happened previously is pre-existing as well. So some things, it's all about whether or not it's, like, the word is material, relevant.
Interesting.
And so by way of example of that is kind of a rule of thumb I always talk to people about is if something is either recent or significant, it's material. And those are things that it's probably easier for people to recall because it's either recent or significant. If it's something a long time ago or not significant, it's generally not relevant, and therefore that's the ones that people worry about, like, I might not remember if I sprained my ankle playing netball when I was 15 years ago, and nor do they need to recall that because obviously it'll be hard to recall, but it's also not going to be relevant. So had they even known that, it wouldn't have, the insurers, it'd be very unlikely that would be relevant. So
right.
So it kind of that kind of naturally takes a lot of it out of the concern around non-disclosure, but it is still a serious topic that good advisors and clients need to know what is non-disclosure, so it doesn't happen. And touch wood, and luckily we've never had a non-disclosure claim declined in the 15 years I've been advising, and that's a record I'd like to maintain. But it still doesn't mean it can't happen, and it doesn't happen, but luckily it's very rare. In the personal insurance space, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. And it makes a lot of sense that, say, for example, with life insurance, that, it's something that's relevant to your life as opposed to an injury to your knee, whereas if you're going for health insurance, the knee may be relevant if it's recent, especially if it flares up again in the future, It makes a lot of sense. And so, do you have a questionnaire or a set of questions to help people work through that piece? Because I know when I've done it myself, there is a little bit of anxiety, as in like, oh man, what do I have to remember,
Yeah, 100%. And you want to give the whole point of having any insurance is the outcomes often around peace of mind and having certainty, right?
Mm.
So trying to extract and unearth what's relevant from clients is really important. So we ask questions in some ways where they get layered. So we try to catch anything that comes out of the nets. Sometimes they're asked in slightly different ways to might trigger a response. So there's kind of about two main approaches we do. So when I'm having a first meeting with a client and talking to them about their goals, objectives, what's important to them, and equally what's not, we also kind of cover off. I kind of cover off kind of like six main health questions, right? And it's not an application, and it's not binding, but it gives an insight. So then I can go away and do what I like to call pre-underwriting. So checking in advance before presenting to the client if there is anything that's come up, what it would most likely look like when you apply. So
Right.
questions, at the beginning, they're things like, can you think of anything in your medical history that could affect the application for insurance,
Mm.
or have you been to hospital for an operation? And then we've said, have you had any of these particular conditions? And we kind of list some different ones down there, and then that kind of gives us a pretty good base to find out what things could look like in the event of an application. And then when people actually apply, the insurance application that we do with them is obviously a lot more thorough, right? So then
Mm.
they'll go away and do their checks and they come back with an offer of terms. And
Right.
if there is any exclusions, for example, from a pre-existing condition,
Mm.
um, it is discussed, and we either look at it to see whether or not it seems fair and reasonable, or if we don't, then a good advisor will challenge that with the insurer or compare it with the other providers to make sure that just because one person says that doesn't mean everyone does. So that's but to try, advocate and fight on behalf of the client to get the best terms,
That's cool.
and that, yeah. So a kind of a lot of it is the chance of non-disclosure is heavily reduced by going through that process. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, what about medical records, Travis? Does the insurance company look at a person's medical records, or do you look at them? How does that part work? I've always wondered that myself.
Yeah, it's a good point, and it depends on what the disclosure is. So if someone said something like, "I have high uncontrollable blood pressure," or "I've got high cholesterol, but I've got no idea what the reading is," um, sometimes the insurer can offer to send a health screen nurse to their house to get those
Mm.
data, they get that information, or if they want to find out more for things like maybe ongoing mental health, for example, they can pull those notes from the GP or the doctor so they can assess them. Now, some people say, "Oh, just ask the insurer to get my notes on everything," um, but they don't do that. They only pull through the information that they can request. So, if someone's got ongoing back pain, they might get the information around the back pain from the GP.
Mm.
So, and sometimes they don't need it or don't pull it as well. So,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it's kind of case by case as to whether or not they receive that information from the GP when they apply, depending on what it is. Yeah.
Mm. Interesting. Okay. Hey, and look, talking about medical information, what if somebody has done recent tests with a private provider for whatever reason, and there's a positive result? So, say, for example, if someone had a checkup, like a heart check or a overall general health checkup and that sort of thing, can that be added in a positive way to an application?
Yeah, absolutely. You can always, you can always provide supplementary information. In fact, they'll encourage that to
Right.
support an application. So, for example, if someone's been really diligent and they go for an annual check,
Yeah.
they get their bloods and everything done, the insurer's not going to request that unless they see that there's a reason to. And when they're asking on the forms as well, they don't just say, have you been to just a GP for anything outside of a regular checkup, cold, flu. That's kind of a more of a higher bar. But if you feel like it would supplement or complement your application, absolutely. For example, family history is another one that people ask a bit about.
Mm.
Um, and people might go, "I've had grandparents with this condition or aunties and uncles. Is that going to adversely affect me because they've got, say, a heart condition?" Now, the insurers all ask family history is just immediate family, so mum, dad, brother, sister, so first degree. And it's only for what you know as well. So if we've got someone that doesn't know the family history or might be even adopted, um, it's all about, utmost good faith is the theme. So it's only what you are aware of that you have to disclose. And for mum, dads, brothers, sisters, it's generally if they're under the age of 60 or 65 that they ask. And even
Right.
if there is family history, it doesn't necessarily change your outcome. It's just a piece of the puzzle. So if you've got a bunch of symptoms and then you've also got family history, that's a lot more relevant than if you've just got family history and no symptoms. It's a lot less relevant.
Right,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Yeah. All right, Travis. Well, look,
Yeah.
thanks so much for covering off this gnarly topic, and I hope it's been helpful for the listeners. For those that want to get in touch with Travis and talk about, their personal insurance around their life, health, whatever it might be, you can go to www.advancedmortgagesolutions.co.nz and get in touch with them via the phone number there or the web form. And Travis, you've told us before your appointments are free. Thanks very much for joining us today, and we'll see you on the next one.
No worries. Thanks, Joel. Thanks for having me.